All right, everybody ready? 10 o'clock by a couple of these clocks. We'll go get started with Audit Committee meeting, October 12th. Public comment period is now open. Public comment period, anytime members of the public may comment on any item of interest public that is within the Audit Committee's subject matter jurisdiction. I won't read it all, so it won't be like Ron Burgundy that Supervisor Vanderpool accused me of last meeting. For items appearing on the agenda, the public is invited to make any comments at this time. This time I'd open public comment period. All right, that was brief. Okay. Public comment period is now closed. Item number 2, approve the minutes from the May 18th, 2023 meeting.
Move for approval.
Motion by Britt. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
What? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Sorry?
I know, we're like, how come we can't even pass the minutes today?
Moving on to item 3, review and accept the independence confirmation. Cass, it's all yours.
We are independent in our work as we conduct these internal audits. I guess the big takeaway is that we are not reviewing work that our staff's not reviewing work that they have been associated with, doing entries or journal entries or things like that. So I confirm to the best of my knowledge that staff can objectively conduct these internal audits. That is my brief report.
I'll move to accept the independence confirmation.
Okay. Motion by Jason Britt. Second? Second. Second by Supervisor Valero. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Moving on to number 4, review and accept the Health and Human Service Agency cash receipts based audit report.
Good morning. My name is Melissa Magaña. I'm an account auditor at the auditor's office, and I will be presenting for you today the Health and Human Services cash receipt cycle audit. The time period in which we reviewed the activity was for July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. The agency has about 1,800 different fees in the schedule of fees that is approved by the Board of Supervisors. There is a total of 15 different locations that accept payments throughout the county. And the agency has a total of 2,560 total cash funds within approved change funds or cash different funds. All cash payment locations do work by the County of Tulare Cash Manual as their policies that they follow. The cash receipt cycle is complex, and there are many steps involved, as you can see in this graph. In order to assess internal controls and determine compliance with applicable laws, county policies, and procedures, we selected 8 cash location sites and performed the following tests. We counted the amount of cash on hand and reconciled it to the register receipts. We interviewed key employees and observed the cash handling and internal controls over cash. We verified whether the deposits, whether the days collections were deposited correctly, and we compared the fees that were charged to the public against the fees that were in the schedule of fees that the Board of Supervisors approves. We also compared the revenues the agency collected in fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 21 for any variances. Based on our testing, we found that the agency excels in many areas, such as there were no unexplained variances in the revenues for fiscal year 22 compared to fiscal year 21. The agency's management regularly performs surprise cash counts. At all 8 collection cash sites that we visited, all cash was counted without exception. All of our samples, all the collections were deposited timely in the samples that we collected. Any unused county receipt books were adequately safeguarded, and all customers were provided with receipts as per the compliance with the cash manual. Although the agency excels in many areas, there were some weaknesses found in the agency's internal controls and compliances with the county policies, as explained in the following 5 findings. In order to have effective internal controls over the cash receipt cycle, duties should be segregated so that there's checks and balances to create and reduce risk. The main types of duties that should be segregated are authorizing, recording, reconciling, and custody. With this in mind, 3 of the 8 locations that we found had duties that could be more effectively segregated. At one location, an employee was able to prepare and reconcile the deposit and take it directly to the bank without having an employee looking and reviewing the deposit. At this location, many employees also were able to open the mail and endorse the checks received in the mail, and were able to enter that into the receiving software. The issue with this is that if only one employee is able to record, reconcile, and prepare the deposit without having another employee review it, it could lead to loss of funds, and as well as if all employees are able to open the mail and record the payments received, it could lead to an opportunity to misappropriate funds. At another location, a single employee was able to handle the entire cash receipt cycle, including taking payments, reconciling the cash and checks to the receipts, and preparing the bank deposit. Although this location has 2 employees trained as backups, this employee rescheduled appointments in order for the backups not to handle the cash. The issue we found with this is that if one employee handles the entire cash receipt cycle, this could lead to stolen funds or errors happening. Finally, at the other location, all employees were able to open the mail, record the payments received in the log, and endorse all the checks. Just like with the first location, if all employees are able to do this, it could lead to misappropriated funds or errors entered into the log. Having segregated duties helps reduce the risk of lost or stolen funds. Within these locations, the agency may have had limited staff, which could have led to the inadequate segregation of duties. We recommend that the agency review the cash manual, and for each location, review the workflow to identify potential opportunities of inadequate segregation of duties. And if those areas are found, they should implement additional workflow steps for a separate employee to review the work done. In addition to this, we observed additional internal control shortcomings related to cash received in the mail. At one location, they did not utilize a mail log as required by the cash manual. This location has now started to use a mail log after our visit. At 5 locations, they use an electronic mail log, such as Excel. If such a log is not protected, it could lead to a manipulation of the log or like data alterations within the log. 3 locations did not immediately endorse the checks upon receipt as per required by the cash manual. At 2 locations, employees who opened the mail were able to also prepare the deposit. The cash manual states that the employee who opens the mail should not be the same employee who prepares the deposits. And lastly, at one location, they recorded some but not all of the checks into the mail log. The checks that were not recorded in the mail log were the checks that were entered into the receiving software or checks received by donors. In the cash manual, it states that all checks should be entered into the mail log, even if they're for a different department, just for reconciliation purposes. Following the proper procedures reduces several risks, and just so that all checks are written down, and if they're misplaced or stolen, you could keep a record of where the checks were. We recommend that the agency distribute the current cash manual to all employees who handle cash. Also, that all locations that receive payments should record it in the mail log. And if the mail log is electronic, it should be protected, such as using a password protection and limiting the amount of employees who have access to the log. If such protections can't happen, then we suggest that they print the mail log and place it with their daily reconciliations. In addition to this, any checks received, whether it be for that location or for different locations, should be recorded in the mail log, to help provide an accurate record of what was received and help provide accountability. The cash manual states that funds maintained in a department should be kept locked with limited access to authorized employees only. If there is more than one fund at a location, it should be kept in 2 separate locked bags or lock boxes, and funds should never be commingled or loaned to one another. Another thing the cash manual states is that if an employee has a transaction, it should be reconciled at the end of the day, and an independent employee should review that reconciliation. At one location, we found that 5 employees have access to a safe. A log is maintained to record whenever the safe is opened. However, it could be opened without making entry to the log. This location also does not utilize their change fund that often and reconciles their fund quarterly. If a discrepancy, a shortage, or overage were over to occur, it would go unnoticed for an extended period of time, making accountability very difficult. We recommend that the agency review the employees who have access to the safe at this location and limit access. A way to do this is by creating a dual combination system where 2 employees are needed to open the safe. We also consider them reconciling their funds every time a transaction is made. If a transaction doesn't occur that often, at least reconciling the fund monthly is recommended. And if the fund isn't used as often, it should be reassessed to see if the fund is needed at all. Another finding is that per the cash manual, this establishes the minimum cash handling policies and process for all departments. Departments can make stricter policies if wanted. The agency just expects everybody to follow the cash manual. As I noted in the first finding, 1 employee was able to handle the entire cash receipt cycle at this location. Upon speaking further with this employee, it was noted that they were unaware of the cash manual. This is concerning if that 1 employee handles the entire cash that flows through that location and not be aware of the cash manual, because it could lead to a risk of error or potential theft. We recommend that the agency train and refresh all employees who handle a portion of the cash receipt cycle, and those who are hired or just on an annual basis. The agency has informed us that they have resumed in-person training over the cash manual. They've also uploaded on-demand online training in Relias for any employees, whether hire or for refreshers for employees to access. Our final finding is we all know that cash and checks are highly susceptible to mishandling and theft. Therefore, it is essential for employees to report suspected misconduct. Staff at 5 of the 8 locations said that if misconduct were suspected, they would report it to the direct supervisor, often through a written memo. 7 locations stated that staying anonymous was not an option, and many staff that we spoke to were not aware of the county fraud hotline that is offered to make anonymous reports. Some employees may be reluctant to make such reports to the direct supervisor due to fear of repercussions or many consequences that they may face making those reports. Some may also want to report, such concerns about a direct supervisor, so they don't have clear channels to who to report to. And also some employees may find writing a report intimidating. So we recommend that the agency inform all employees about the kind of fraud hotline to make anonymous reports. This way they're able to make such reports about a direct supervisor without the fear of repercussions. The county fraud hotline is operated through the Auditor Controller's office, and more information may be found on the Auditor Controller's website. In closing, I ask that the committee review and accept the Health and Human Services Agency Cash Receipt Cycle Report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Questions? No questions? All right. Do I have a motion to review and accept the HHSA cash receipt cycle-based audit?
Move for approval.
Motion by Flores. I have a second.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Valero. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you for your presentation.
I'll just share thereafter, but again, thank you for your work in making sure that safeguards are in place and that departments like HHSA are working diligently across financial transactions. And so again, we are always looking ways to improve, and your recommendations help us get there, so thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Moving on to number 5, review and accept the internal assessment report. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Kristen Odom. I'm the Chief of Financial Reporting and Audits. So per government code, we're required to follow professional standards that are set forth by the Institute of Internal Auditors. And those apply to any internal audits that we perform. This internal assessment report covers the period of July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. I do want to note the last one that we did, typically we do these annually. The last one that we did covered fiscal year 21, so we had a 1-year gap. And that was just due to some staff turnover and shortages. We didn't have enough experienced staff available to do like an adequate internal assessment for that year. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because some things in this presentation go back to that year, so they might sound a little out of date, but that's the reason why. So the professional standards, they require that we have a quality assurance and improvement program. It's comprised of 3 separate elements: ongoing monitoring, external assessments, and internal assessments. Ongoing monitoring is the day-to-day supervision, review, and measurement to evaluate our efficiency, effectiveness, performance, and conformance to those standards. We do several different things for our ongoing monitoring. The first is to track key performance indicators. That can be things like when we create our audit plan, we provide an expected number of hours that an audit will take. So we'll compare the expected hours to how long it actually took us. We'll look at things like internal milestone deadlines, if we're meeting those. Another element of our ongoing monitoring is tracking continuing professional education. All employees in our division are required to complete 80 hours of professional education in every 2-year period. For the 2-year period that ended June 30th, 2023, all of the employees who work on internal audits met or exceeded their professional education requirement. Another example of our ongoing monitoring is supervisor checklists. So at the end of every audit engagement, the supervisor just goes through a checklist to make sure that all of the work for the audit meets our quality expectations, and also that we've met all the elements of the professional standards. Something else that we like to do is track how many engagements we complete every year. This chart shows our activity for the last 3 fiscal years. The blue bars are risk-based audits that we've completed, so you can see 1 or 2 each year. Follow-up reviews are the gray bars. We've gone to an annual review cycle, so there will be 1 every year. The burgundy bar is department head change consulting engagements. I'll get into the reason why in a little bit, but we've gone away from the formal department head change consulting engagements. They were fairly time-consuming, and now we've transitioned to a shorter department head transition review, we're calling them. And we still make sure the same elements are occurring during the department head transition, but we're expecting departments to self-report instead of us taking the time to really review everything. And new this last fiscal year, we've started doing cash handling reviews, which is the yellow bar. To measure our effectiveness, we look at different things we've done to improve compliance across the county. As I mentioned, we've started doing annual follow-up reviews. Before we moved to the annual review, when we followed up on audit recommendations, it was done through kind of a mini audit to repeat the initial audit. Now going to the annual review cycle, we look at all of the remaining recommendations across all of the audits, so we're able to follow up more frequently on the recommendations. And in the first two that we've completed, we were able to close out about 85% of the recommendations in each audit. Another thing that we do is we monitor and report for federal grants. So as you're all probably aware, the county received over $90 million through the American Rescue Plan Act. The division is responsible for monitoring the eligibility for the expenses, and we compile and report them to the U.S. Treasury just to help make sure the county's in compliance with that program and we get to keep all of that funding. The division is also responsible for preparing the schedule of expenditures for federal awards, and that compiles information for the federal awards from all departments. This last spring, we revised the request for the information that we receive from departments in order to get more detailed and accurate information. We also have changed our process to compile that data to more accurately or to more thoroughly review the data, identify variances. And what this does is it helps us be confident that what we're providing is accurate, and that report is it's audited by external auditors. So we want to limit the audit findings that we might have or avoid them altogether. And then another thing that we've done is started doing cash handling reviews. So those are identifying high-risk cash collection sites in the county and reconciling the cash on hand to make sure there's no discrepancies, and interviewing employees and observing their procedures just so we can make suggestions to improve their internal controls. The second part of the quality assurance and improvement program is the external assessment. And this is done by an independent reviewer from outside of the county. It has to be performed every 5 years. The last one was completed in October of 2021. The reviewer said that our internal control system was suitably designed to provide reasonable assurance of conformance with the standards, and that's the highest level opinion. Although he did say we were in conformance with the standards, they offered 2 suggestions for improvement. The first was to consult with management and the Board of Supervisors during our risk assessment, which is something that is required by the professional standards. And so in May of '22, when we were performing the risk assessment, we sent out letters to department heads and the Board of Supervisors asking for input about areas of concern they had, anything that they would like to see an audit on. And we took those responses into consideration when we prepared the audit plan. The second suggestion for improvement was to discuss the costs and benefits of developing a more robust internal audit function that would examine the county's governance and management information systems. So in response to this suggestion, we filled our vacant positions, so we were operating fully staffed. We changed the procedures for department head changes, so that way we could, the time that we were spending on that, maybe find more relevant things to spend that time on. And in our most recent audit plan, we proposed a performance audit, which we'd never done before. And the last element of this program is the internal assessment. And the purpose of it is to assess our conformance to the professional standards and also to identify opportunities for improvement. The internal assessment is done by members of our division, but the employees, they don't review their own work, so that way they're able to stay objective. So for this year's internal assessment, we found that we generally conform to the standards. We had identified one opportunity for improvement in our previous internal assessment, which we've implemented. And we found one gap to conformance, and that a gap to conformance is it means that we're falling short of one element of a standard, and we identified one opportunity for improvement. So in our last internal assessment, we found that there was some audit information that wasn't being saved in our, with all of our work papers. It was usually from verbal discussions if we met with the department and learned some important information. And so now we just make sure that we're writing those things down and saving them with our documentation. For this internal assessment, let me find it in my notes here. So the standard says that internal auditors must determine appropriate and sufficient resources to achieve engagement objectives based on evaluation of the nature and complexity of each engagement, the time constraints, and the available resources. At the beginning of each audit engagement, we send an engagement letter to the department that we're auditing, and we provide the date that we expect the report to be completed. And as I mentioned earlier, we establish a budget for the number of hours we think that each engagement will take us. In recent years, we've been sending the reports after the initial expected date, and our number of hours have taken a lot longer than we expect. Some of it is due to turnover, just because it takes, when we have new staff, they not only have to learn the audit procedures, but they also have to learn and understand the processes of the county so that way they can effectively audit them. And so because we have had some turnover recently, that's a contributing factor for this. So our action plan going forward is that if engagements will take longer than expected, we will clearly communicate the extended timeline to the audited department. And when we develop our next audit plan, we will really take into consideration our staffing capabilities and performance on previous engagements to make more appropriate hour budgets for the audits. And then our opportunity for improvement that we found, so one of the standards requires engagements to be properly supervised to ensure objectives are achieved, quality is assured, and staff is developed, and also that reviews should take place at appropriate times in the engagement. And we've had a couple times where when staff finishes their audit work, it takes, a month or so for a supervisor to go back in and review it. And so staff aren't necessarily getting timely feedback on their work. And so that's just something we think we can improve on. So that concludes the internal assessment report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Kristen. Any questions or comments?
Just a quick comment, great job, Cass, and your team. I know you continue to do a good job on these internal audits and all the work you do. I know there's been a lot of additional work also with CARES and ARPA over the last 2-3 years, and so I do appreciate all the effort you put into this, and so it's a great report. Still a few places to improve, but not big things that you can overcome. So just wanted to say appreciate all the work. With that, I'd move for approval if there's no other comments.
Motion by Jason. Second by Supervisor Valero. Cast your votes. That's funny.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you, Kristen. And moving on to item number 6, approve and update the 2-year audit plan for fiscal years 2023 and 2024. Hey, good to see you again.
So in June of 2022, we brought to this committee the audit plan for the 2 fiscal years of 2023 and 2024. In that audit plan, 7 new audits were selected. When we developed that plan, we were fully staffed. We had 8 employees, and since then, we've had like I mentioned before, some unexpected turnover, and about half of our staff took a leave of absence. So the number of time we anticipated having for audits, we ended up having much less than what we thought. Additionally, we've been assisting with the county's upgrade to the accounting system. Our group spent a lot of time testing the reports in the new system. We did a little bit of training for other county departments. And when the new system went live, we validated the data to make sure that it was good going forward. So all of that took a lot more time than we expected also. So that being said, we have not gotten as far on the audit plan as we expected to be at this point. So this lists all of the audits. The first 3 are audits from previous audit plans that were in progress last June. We've completed all 3 of them. And then the other 7 are the new ones that were selected with this audit plan. We've started 2 of them. The probation department cash disbursement cycle audit, we're about 1/4 of the way through. And the countywide leave accruals and balances audit, we're in the planning stages of. So between now and June 30th, we expect to have about 2,350 hours for internal audit activities. That's not just risk-based audits, though. For those 2 that we've started, we expect them to take about 660 hours. We also have anticipated engagements like those department head transitions and going out and reviewing internal controls for cash. We will be doing the 2023 follow-up review, and also we have some hours for monitoring and reporting for ARPA. That large chunk of 950 hours, those are routine audit functions that we perform, such as every payroll cycle, we review retirement contributions for accuracy, we monitor special districts' financial reporting, we maintain and monitor the fraud hotline, and also for performing the following year's risk assessment and things like that. So after you deduct all of those out, we expect to have about 225 hours to begin another risk-based audit. So that lists the 5 that we haven't started from the audit plan. The next one was Human Resources and Development Payroll Cycle. Payroll audits are some of the most time-consuming for the departments that we're auditing because they maintain all the records and have to provide them to us. They're not things we can go look up and find on our own. And because HRD is working on their system upgrade, we think that starting this audit would be a burden on their staff. Also, the next one would be HHSA cash disbursements audit, and as you heard, we just finished an audit on them. We try not to do back-to-back audits on a department. So that would leave the clerk recorder performance audit, which that was something the department requested to look at their efficiencies and processes to see if there are ways they can improve. Also the district attorney payroll audit and the public defender cash disbursement audit. So we could start another audit, but we also have noticed there's a need for training of fiscal staff in other departments. We're not the only one who's experienced turnover. There's a lot of new faces in county fiscal staff. And so we think it might be beneficial, instead of starting another audit, to spend that time doing some basic training. It would have a further reach. We'd be able to work with all of the departments instead of focusing on a single one. So that's an option also. So our request is to approve the update on the 2-year audit plan. And as part of that approval, we are asking for direction on whether we should start an audit and which one, or if we should spend that time on training.
Thank you, Kristen. Questions or comments, direction?
I just have a comment. So I like the idea of training staff, because I think there has been a lot of turnover, and I'm just sort of trying to think of like, what would that look like? What kind of training would you provide? Is it just basic what the auditor's office does and what you do? Just kind of give me an idea.
We've discussed doing just basic governmental accounting training because some of the employees have never worked for a government before, and governmental accounting is very different from other accounting. And then also training on how to use the accounting system, the different funds and processes for the county. So kind of, I think we'd be open to anything, seeing where the needs are and maybe tailoring it for each department what they need.
Thank you.
Any additional?
I have one question. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So for the audits that have not yet started yet, are we taking those off the table completely, or would those come back later at a later date?
Our next audit plan will be presented in July. And so if we don't do one of those, we will keep them in mind. We'll reassess the risk and make sure that there's still a need for them, but they will be considered for the next audit plan.
Thank you.
Supervisor Blair?
Yeah, so I will just share that I'm a huge proponent of educating our staff, building them up, getting them prepared and ready. And so I would totally agree on the training of the county fiscal staff. But since you already have someone here who is requesting their performance evaluation, which is the clerk recorder, maybe moving that up the line once you've kind of trained the fiscal staff, and just seeing that Tara's here in the audience, is that something that, again, you're willing to wait on once staff internally has been trained in order to go out and do the work? Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, we typically don't do a back-to-back, so again, moving the clerk recorder's performance request up would be ideal.
I know this, I agree with that. I hesitate to ask, but on the performance audits, you're really looking at like processes, right, versus financials. Is that my understanding?
Right,
So
yeah.
would there be an opportunity maybe if the clerk recorder really needed that done sooner than later, is that a type of audit that could maybe be outsourced? I don't know, just asking. Like, anyway, I'll leave it to you guys,
Yeah.
but I'm all for the training. I think you guys have done a lot of auditing the last couple of years. I do agree there's a lot of people turning over. And I think at some point we have to sort of pause and be like, we got to get people trained up on all the stuff we found so that they don't do it again. And I'm sure every department is doing that, but a different way. So maybe just kind of some of that reinforcement training, and then the basics would be helpful, especially since in light of the new AFIN system being implemented, and then on the heels of that will probably be payroll. So,
Okay.
and you'll have a lot of auditing with the new payroll system.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will just echo, I do like what you just mentioned. Is there a possibility for getting someone to come and do the performance audit so it takes less of your time as well? So.
I think it's a possibility. I know that there are accounting firms who do those kinds of things, but
Yeah. And it's
can
not a
look into
requirement,
it.
it's just a thought, like, because I do know the clerk recorder is trying to really modernize and streamline and do things, and so I know Tara's here, so either Cass or Tara could talk, but I'm not trying to give you guys work.
No greater pleasure than auditing Tara's department.
I figured that would take the fun out of it, Cass, but.
I just want to provide a little bit of clarity. So
Your
it's
name and address for
something-
the record, please.
It's something that the audit committee had been asking for a while. I think specifically Vanderpool was to start doing some more performance auditing. And so it was selfishly, I think, a great idea. I'd love to have our processes looked at with more resources, but also an opportunity to work together to kind of be that guinea pig for performance auditing for the county. Because it's hard to come in and just tell people how they should do things in their business. It's kind of a, performance auditing itself can be tricky. And so it was kind of a way that the familiarity with the department that we could work together and kind of be that guinea pig. So outsourcing is definitely an option. It was kind of also more of a training opportunity to work together, so.
I appreciate that context.
Thank you.
So so I think I'm supportive of training, the remaining hours using training, and just making sure that we reassess whether those additional departments need to come back on the next audit plan. So with that, I would motion that we provide direction to provide training for the remaining 225 hours and accept the report, I guess.
That was a long motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you for your presentation. Moving on to number 7, committee member and staff reports, staff matters.
I just want to say congratulations to the Auditor's Office for receiving once again the GFOA Certificate of Achievement of Excellence in Financial Reporting. I just got the email this morning. Yes, I forwarded it to you, Mr. Cook. So I'm just saying surprise, because I was like, oh, Cass is here, I'm going to say it. So congratulations once again. I think that's many years in a row. So I don't know how many, 25. So yeah, so congrats. The letter came in this morning to the chairman, but so I shared it with you. You do have it in your email, but.
Yeah, outstanding. Any other matters? We went through payroll-based audit a few years ago, and it was mostly painful, but it's looking at the training component of what we just talked about. When I first was introduced to government finance, and again, firefighter, it was like GASB 15. And I mean, so that's been so long ago, and the challenge for training is so important, and you folks have done just a tremendous job breaking things down, because, you know, we're the only 56-hour work week in the county, and it's very, very complex still to this day. So I appreciate your efforts. Oh, you bet.
Yeah, and I'll just share, I know that we don't meet often, but when we do, I take great pleasure in sitting down and listening to all of this, because, again, like Chief mentioned, you truly care about the health and the well-being and the security of our county, and so your work goes so far in terms of just making sure, again, that the county is moving forward in the right direction, and again, thank you so much for that.
Any additional? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn to January 11th, 2024? Okay, so moved. Second, motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a great day.